Okay. All right. So this is a um, design that is based off of the existing catalog template. And this is what I put together from last year. And my brand was Nike, but I'm going to change it this year because, again, I want to kind of build this thing on screen as well along with you while we have our sessions in class together. Um, just so you can see some of the process as it's coming along and so on and so forth. Um, so this is kind of what it turned out to be. Just kind of using this more expressive type. You can see I changed all of the type here, and this is all through paragraph and character styles. So that's essentially it. I eventually took all the names. Some of these names were not actual names, but I kind of took what they had and then sort of maybe added a twist to it, or just kind of put in a random number, like for instance this Pro 2 or something like that. Um, Essentially, that, and this is unfinished too. I actually needed to put something here on my lifestyle page, but everything else is pretty much where I wanted it to be. Um, in that. The concept here was, so for all the shoes, and actually you can even see here I still have some more MIFs and I still have some work to do in my paragraphs to give it a more like realistic, real life application, if you will. So some of it's definitely unfinished at this point, but that's just some of the details that someone might catch later on, perhaps. But what my concept really was, essentially, was to take these numbers. So all these numbers here, and then this number here, this is the purple number, and then this is like the shoe model number here. And so both of those numbers put together tell the seller of the shoe what the shoe is. So is this a LeBron purple or is this a LeBron blue? Those are some of the things. This shoe is actually, there we go. So where the concept comes in is that all of these numbers here correspond to a shoe in the catalog. So then I'm using it as like a kind of like a stylistic element in the catalog itself, just all the different shoe combination numbers and so on and so forth. So, even something simple like that could potentially be something that you can kind of run with and just experiment with. Okay, so basically that. Let's say I got everything done here, and I want to export this piece as a packaged InDesign file. So what that means is that when I go to File and Package here, what InDesign is going to do is it's going to create a centralized folder, and then it's going to have within that centralized folder two subfolders, one called Fonts and then one called Links. The fonts folder is going to house all of the different fonts that I've used in this entire document. The great thing about that is that if you were to pass this along to a printer, or you were to pass this along to another fellow designer to kind of finish up or tweak or so on and so forth, essentially collaborate with, they would have one folder that would have all of the fonts that they needed to load on their machine to make this look the way it does and not have any breaking font issues. Font issues as a designer is the worst ever. It's a lot to manage, and so packaging your InDesign file is going to manage all of that for you and make your life really easy. It's going to save you a lot of time looking for a font that InDesign says you need to make it display properly. And then also for the links folder, the links folder is going to then package, all of your shoe images and all of other supporting images that you've used in your layout. Say you have a background image or anything else, it's going to package those images as well. is if you remember when we first kind of dived into InDesign, each of these image files, they're not literally placed into the layout. They are actually, like this design here does not have these pixels from the shoe actually physically in the layout. It's actually taking the original Photoshop file, and I'll open this links palette again. It's taking this original football4.psd file, and it's actually streaming it, if you will, into this document. So it's very similar to when you go on a website and you are streaming a YouTube video through the site. The YouTube video is not physically on the website. It's not hard loaded into it. It is actually streaming from an external source into the website. So it's almost like a window that's streaming it in. So that's InDesign in a nutshell and what's going to happen. So my football4.psd file is going to then be copied into my links folder where it will be directly linked to the InDesign file. So for instance, you're in the real world and you're working on an InDesign file and a designer said, hey, open up my folder on the server. It's got an InDesign document into it. You open it up and you notice, well, this housing folder doesn't have a links folder or a fonts folder. Probably 100% of the time when you open up that InDesign document, you're going to see broken links in here. And so the broken link symbol is this little is going to be this little status piece here. So this will come up if the link is either missing or if the link needs to be reloaded, which means that it was saved over and the person that had this InDesign document open did not update that link. So if that designer that you opened up their document packaged that InDesign file for you, then all of those links would be housed into one document, and it would be a nice packaged folder that you can work out of and not have to relink images or relink type and all that other stuff. So that's why it's so important. When I'm working on a project that's pretty large, I will actually package the files every once in a while. That's because if I'm working on a bunch of images that are all over the place in different folders on different servers and all this, and I need them to be in one place at one centralized location, I'll package that file first. And then as I'm working more, I'll probably be pulling more content from different servers, etc. And then I'll have to actually package it again, just so I don't have break any links. So probably a project like this would, I'd package it maybe 3 or 4 times as I'm working through it, just to make sure that I have everything in one place and I don't, if something gets deleted off of a server or something and I lose it forever. This is a surefire way to have a duplicate in one place. So to package InDesign, up to File, Package. You're going to get a little summary here of all this information. The most important pieces here are fonts. It tells you how many fonts are used, how many are missing, which is important, and how many are embedded. Typically, you'll not have any that are embedded. But you will have some that are missing, and so those would have to be fixed and updated. And I can show you on an individual basis where to do that. Otherwise, if you want me to kind of run through it in a demo, I certainly can do that as well. Links and images. It's going to tell you how many links you have. So links, i.e. image for this project's purposes. How many are modified and how many are missing. So I say modified meaning an image was changed in Photoshop that's linked to this InDesign document, and then we never updated that image in InDesign. So say I changed the shoe to red instead of purple, I saved it in Photoshop, I open this InDesign document back up, it's still going to display purple because I didn't tell InDesign, hey, this is updated, update it now. Very important stuff here, the color space that the imagery is using. And you can see that I still have all of my images in RGB, which is a no when it comes to printing. Um, so that could be solved pretty quickly, and I can go through that as well. Colors and inks, this is just the nature of the document, so it's going to be a 4-color document and so on and so forth. All this stuff, everything else is just kind of extra info. Here's fonts, list of all the fonts that are being used here in this file. Here's a comprehensive list of all the links. And that. So that's essentially what this panel is showing you. It's just a brief overview of what you're about to package. And then if you just hit this package button here, it's going to just give you this dialog box, which is never really used unless you really want to put your contact information, company address, phone, etc. So instructions, essentially. I just hit continue. So then your create a package folder prompt is going to come up. This will be pretty important for you to kind of know your way around. And essentially it's these 3 selections here. Making sure that these 3 are the only ones checked off is probably what you're going to want to do, unless you want an IDML file. If you remember, an IDML file is a file that you create for someone that might not have the latest version of InDesign. So say you know that the printer you always work for or work with has InDesign CS5. Well, when you export this as is, they're not going to have the ability to open that InDesign file in CC 2017. So you'll want to check include IDML file, and that'll make a copy of a file that'll be compatible for earlier versions of InDesign. Not going to check that now. The 3 main important ones here are the copying of the fonts, the copying of the linked graphics, and updating the graphic links when they're packaged. So if you have links in your InDesign document that are not updated, meaning, again, going to my example of this shoe, saying it was red in the original, but now it's purple, and I did not update it, this setting could just automatically do it once it's packaged up. And then simply navigate to where you want to save your file. You can then rename your, now I said file, it's actually a folder. So it's going to be a folder with a bunch of multiple files within it. So shoe catalog, I'll call it example folder. And then just hit package again once you name it what you want. This is just a warning about copying font software and so on and so forth. We don't have to really worry about that. This is an educational assignment. If you're using a font from an outside source, make sure you have permissions to use it. If it's from a website from somewhere, there's different levels of permissions. And sometimes it's just a matter of you emailing the designer and asking, hey, can I use this for this project? And a lot, like 9 times out of 10, they'll have an auto response that says, yeah, go ahead. Because they probably get hundreds of thousands of emails. Maybe that's over exaggerating, but kind of get the picture there. So here's my folder on my desktop that it created, shoe catalog example folder. And then you can open that up and see that I have all of my fonts packaged, my instructions, which really has nothing on it. Typically, I'll just toss that away, unless you have real specific instructions on something like that. But I don't know. You never know. And then all of your shoe images that are linked up here. Oh, and last but not least, the InDesign document. So when you then when you then turn in your layouts, all you'll have to do is zip up this file. So on a Windows machine, typically it's like a right click and then you'll have the option to zip it. For the Apple, you can control click and then hit this compress option here. And it's just going to compress this for you. And then so this file is all I'll need is that zip file. Once I open it on my end, I can just crack it open and I'll be able to see everything here, which is really the crux of what matters, the links, the fonts, and the InDesign file. That way I can pop open the InDesign file and everything will be linked properly, and everything will display as it should. So are there any questions on that? If you want to walk through it one-on-one when you're ready, that's totally fine too. It's me explaining it is a lot more complicated than it actually is.